There comes a time in life when we stand at the crossroads of fear and faith, holding tightly to what we think we can control. The weight of worry presses in, the uncertainty of tomorrow lingers, and we ask ourselves, what if I let go? The answer is simple yet profound. Trust God. When you let go, when you surrender what you cannot change, when you release the burdens you were never meant to carry, you step into the victory that God has already prepared for you. Too often we hold on to our struggles, believing that if we try just a little harder, push just a little more, we can fix everything. But the truth is, we were never meant to fight life's battles alone. God calls us to trust, to lean not on our own understanding, but to acknowledge Him in all our ways. And when we do, He directs our paths. The very things that seem impossible, the mountains that seem unmovable, become stepping stones toward His purpose. Consider the stories of those who have gone before us, men and women who faced overwhelming trials yet chose to trust. Joseph, sold into slavery, falsely accused, imprisoned. Yet he trusted God, and in time he rose to a position of great influence. Daniel, thrown into the lion's den, refused to fear because he knew who held his future. The Apostle Paul, beaten, shipwrecked, and imprisoned, never lost faith, knowing that in all things God was working for his good. The same God who delivered them is the same God who walks with you today. Your struggle is not the end of your story. Your pain does not define you. Your past does not limit what God can do in your future, but you must let go. Let go of the fear that whispers, "What if?" Let go of the doubt that tells you it's too late. Let go of the control you were never meant to have. Trust God and you will overcome. Trusting God brings a freedom that nothing in this world can offer. So many people live their lives weighed down by worry, fear, and the constant need for control. They believe that if they can just manage every detail, plan for every possible outcome, and hold tightly to their own understanding, they will somehow find security. But in reality, the tighter we hold on, the more anxious and exhausted we become. True freedom is found in releasing control and trusting that God is sovereign over every aspect of our lives. Fear keeps us trapped. It whispers that if we don't take charge, everything will fall apart. It convinces us that we must figure things out on our own. But fear is a liar. It blinds us to the truth that God is already at work, moving in ways we cannot see. The moment we choose to trust Him, to surrender our fears and uncertainties, we experience a peace that goes beyond human understanding. Instead of being controlled by anxiety, we are filled with the assurance that the one who created the heavens and the earth is holding our lives in His hands. There is a reason the Bible tells us repeatedly not to be afraid. God knows our natural tendency to worry and try to control things. He reminds us again and again that He is in control, that He will never leave us, and that He is working all things together for good. Yet, even with these promises, many struggle to let go. They want to trust, but the idea of releasing control feels risky. What if things don't go as planned? What if they don't see immediate answers? What if God's way looks different from what they expected? That is where faith comes in. Trusting God means believing that His plan is greater than our own, even when we don't understand it. It means surrendering our own limited perspective and choosing to rest in the knowledge that He sees the full picture. When we trust Him, we no longer have to carry the heavy burden of figuring everything out. We don't have to stress about tomorrow because we know that God is already there. Think about a child learning to swim. If the child thrashes in fear, refusing to trust the parent's outstretched arms, panic sets in and the struggle only grows. But the moment the child relaxes, rests, and trusts, they realize they are safe. In the same way, when we let go of our frantic need for control and trust God to hold us, we discover a freedom we never knew was possible. The world teaches that strength comes from self-reliance, from standing on our own and making things happen. But the kingdom of God operates differently. True strength is found in surrender. It is found in laying down our burdens at the feet of Jesus and trusting that He will carry us through. This doesn't mean life will be free of difficulties, but it does mean that we won't be walking through them alone. Instead of striving in our own strength, we will experience the power of God working in and through us. Many people miss out on the fullness of what God has for them because they refuse to let go. They hold tightly to their own plans, their own fears, their own need for control. And in doing so, they miss the freedom that comes with surrender. But when we choose to trust, everything changes. Our perspective shifts. Instead of living in a constant state of stress and worry, we step into a life of peace, joy, and confidence, not in ourselves, but in the God who never fails. Trusting God does not mean we will never face challenges. It does not mean that life will always go the way we expect, but it does mean that no matter what comes our way, we can walk in freedom, knowing that our lives are held in the hands of a loving, all-powerful God. Life was never meant to be a battle we fight alone. Yet so often people carry burdens they were never designed to bear. They struggle under the weight of fear, doubt, and anxiety, believing that they must find a way through their challenges by their own strength. But the truth is, God never intended for us to navigate life in isolation. He calls us to trust Him, to lean on Him, and to allow Him to carry what we cannot. When we understand this, we step into a peace that goes beyond anything the world can offer. From the very beginning, God's desire has been for His people to rely on Him. In the Old Testament, we see countless examples of individuals who tried to take matters into their own hands, only to find themselves overwhelmed by their circumstances. The Israelites, after being miraculously delivered from Egypt, still struggled with trusting God. Instead of relying on His promises, they feared the unknown, doubted His provision, and tried to control their own destiny. Time and time again, they had to be reminded that their strength was not enough, but God's strength was. There is something exhausting about trying to fight life's battles alone. The human heart was not made to carry the weight of the world. That is why Jesus extended an invitation, saying, "Come to me, all who are weary and burdened, and I will give you rest." He did not say, "Figure it out on your own." He did not say, "Try harder." He simply said, "Come." The weight of fear, the pressure to have all the answers, the exhaustion of trying to fix everything, none of it was ever meant to be our burden. When we come to Him, we find the rest and strength that we so desperately need. Think about a person trying to swim against a powerful current. No matter how strong they are, eventually fatigue sets in. The fight becomes overwhelming, and the more they struggle, the harder it becomes to stay afloat. But when they stop fighting and trust the lifeguard to pull them to safety, everything changes. The struggle ends, and they are carried to solid ground. That is what happens when we surrender our need to control everything and trust God to fight for us. God is not distant. He is not watching from afar, waiting for us to figure things out on our own. He is near. He is present in every storm, every hardship, and every moment of uncertainty. When we try to rely on our own strength, we are limited. Our wisdom, our endurance, our ability to handle life's challenges, they all have limits. But God's strength is limitless. He does not grow weary. He does not become overwhelmed. He is able to do far more than we could ever ask or imagine, but we must be willing to let go and trust Him. Many times people hesitate to surrender because they fear losing control, but the reality is they never had control in the first place. Worrying about the future does not change it. Carrying burdens alone does not make them lighter. Trusting God does not mean we sit back and do nothing. It means we acknowledge that He is the one leading the way. It means we pray, we seek Him, and we walk forward in faith, knowing that we are not alone. Even the strongest people reach a breaking point. Even the most determined individuals come to moments where they feel like they cannot go on. But the good news is that they do not have to. God stands ready to step in, to carry what is too heavy for us, and to provide strength where ours runs out. There is no shame in surrender, only freedom. The battle was never meant to be ours alone. God is waiting. He is fighting for us. And when we place our trust in Him, we no longer have to fight alone. Life has a way of bringing unexpected challenges. Sometimes the difficulties seem small, bumps in the road that slow us down, but don't stop us completely. Other times they feel like mountains too high to climb, storms too fierce to endure. In those moments, it's easy to wonder where God is and why He allows such struggles to come our way. But the truth is, even in the darkest valleys, even in the trials that seem unbearable, God is still at work. His plan is never derailed by hardships. In fact, He often uses the very things that seem to break us to shape us for something greater. Joseph's life is a powerful example of this. As a young man, he had dreams of greatness, of God using him in a mighty way, but instead of stepping immediately into that promise, he was betrayed by his own brothers, thrown into a pit, and sold into slavery. For years, he faced injustice, false accusations, and imprisonment. From the outside, it looked like his story was one of suffering and loss, but behind the scenes, God was working. Every setback was positioning him for something greater. Every hardship was shaping his character, preparing him for the moment when he would rise to a place of leadership and save an entire nation from famine. What others meant for harm, God used for good. Daniel's story is another reminder that trials do not mean God has abandoned us. When he was thrown into the lion's den for refusing to stop praying, it seemed like the end, but God had already gone ahead of him. He shut the mouths of the lions, and instead of being destroyed, Daniel's faith became a testimony to an entire kingdom. The very trial that was meant to silence him became the stage on which God's power was displayed. Paul too faced hardship after hardship, beaten, imprisoned, shipwrecked, left for dead. Yet instead of giving up, he declared that in all things God was working for the good of those who love Him. He understood something many struggle to grasp. Trials are not the end of the story. They are part of the process. God does not waste pain. He does not allow suffering without purpose. Every struggle is an opportunity for growth, for deeper trust, for a greater testimony of His faithfulness. It is easy to trust God when everything is going well, when prayers are answered quickly, when doors open easily, when life moves forward without resistance. Faith feels natural. But true trust is revealed in the waiting, in the hardship, in the moments when nothing makes sense. That is when faith is refined. That is when character is developed. That is when God is doing His greatest work behind the scenes. Sometimes people assume that difficulties mean they have taken a wrong turn, that if God were truly with them, life would be easier. But the Bible never promises a life without trials. It promises that God will be with us in the midst of them. He never said we would avoid the fire. He said He would walk through it with us. He never said the storm wouldn't come. He said He would be our peace in the middle of it. Many people give up too soon. They let discouragement take over, believing that because things are hard, God must not be working. But what if Joseph had given up in prison? What if Daniel had compromised in fear? What if Paul had decided the suffering was too much? They would have missed the incredible plans God had for them. The same is true today. No matter what the struggle is, no matter how long the waiting season lasts, God is still at work. The pain is not wasted. The trial is not meaningless. The God who was faithful to Joseph, to Daniel, to Paul, is the same God who is faithful now. He has a plan even in the hardship, and in time that plan will unfold in ways beyond what can be imagined. Letting go is one of the hardest things to do. Human nature clings to control, to certainty, to the idea that if we just try hard enough, plan well enough or worry long enough, we can shape the outcome of our circumstances. But the truth is, real peace is found not in holding on, but in releasing. When faith is tested, when life takes unexpected turns, when the future is unclear, the greatest act of strength is surrendering everything into God's hands and trusting that He knows what He is doing. Faith does not require knowing every detail of how things will work out. It does not mean having a perfectly laid out plan or seeing the full picture in advance. Faith means stepping forward even when the next step is unclear. It means believing that God is working even when nothing seems to be changing. It means trusting that His ways are higher, His plans are greater, and His timing is perfect even when it doesn't align with human expectations. Abraham understood this kind of faith. When God called him to leave his home and go to a land he had never seen, he didn't receive a map or a detailed explanation. He was simply told to go, and he went. He let go of familiarity, of comfort, of the security of knowing what was next, and in return he walked into the promise of God. If he had insisted on seeing the full picture first, he never would have stepped into his destiny. Faith required him to move before he had all the answers. Peter experienced this as well. When he saw Jesus walking on the water, he was faced with a choice. He could stay in the boat where it was safe, or he could step out in faith. The moment he fixed his eyes on Jesus and took that first step, the impossible became possible. But the moment he focused on the waves instead of the one who called him, fear took over and he began to sink. Faith requires letting go, not just of control, but of fear, of doubt, of the need to have all the answers. It requires keeping our eyes on God, trusting that He will sustain us even when the waters are deep. So many people hold back from fully trusting God because they are afraid of the unknown. They hesitate to let go of their own plans because they fear what might happen if things don't turn out the way they expect. But faith is not about having every answer in advance. It is about trusting the one who does. Holding on to control does not bring peace. Worrying about the future does not change it. Surrender is not a sign of weakness, it is an act of courage. It is saying, God, I trust you more than I trust myself. I believe your plan is better than mine. I am willing to let go so that you can lead. There is incredible freedom in surrender. The weight of carrying every problem, every uncertainty, every unanswered question is exhausting. But when we release it into God's hands, we find rest. We find the assurance that we are not alone in our struggles. We find the peace that comes from knowing that the same God who created the universe is the same God who holds our lives together. Nothing is out of His control. Nothing catches Him by surprise. Faith is a daily choice. It is choosing to let go of fear and embrace trust. It is choosing to walk forward even when the path is unclear. It is choosing to believe that God is faithful, that He is good, and that He will never fail. There is nothing to lose in trusting Him. Only freedom, only peace, only the certainty that His plans are always greater than anything we could imagine. Letting go is not losing. It is making room for God to move in ways beyond what we can comprehend. Victory is not something that has to be earned, fought for, or figured out. It is already promised. So many people go through life striving, struggling, and pushing to overcome their obstacles in their own strength, never realizing that the battle has already been won. Trusting God is not about hoping things might work out. It is about knowing that through Him, they already have. It is about stepping into the confidence that His power is greater than any challenge. His promises are more certain than any fear, and His faithfulness is unshakable. Too often people live with a defeated mindset. They look at their circumstances, their failures, their struggles, and they believe the lie that they are not strong enough, not good enough, not capable of overcoming. But the truth is, victory was never about personal strength. It was always about God's strength. In him, nothing is impossible. In him, every challenge is an opportunity for his power to be displayed. The moment trust is placed fully in him, everything changes. The weight of striving is lifted, and a new confidence takes its place. A confidence not in self, but in the one who has never been defeated. The Bible is filled with stories of people who faced impossible situations yet walked in victory because they trusted God. David, a shepherd boy with no military experience, faced Goliath, a warrior trained from his youth. By all human standards, David should have lost, but he understood that the battle was not his, it was the Lord's. With nothing but a slingshot and faith, he defeated the giant that others feared. That same God who empowered David is still working today. The giants in life, fear, doubt, hardship, are no match for his power. Joshua and the Israelites faced the walls of Jericho, an obstacle that seemed impenetrable. Logic would have said to build weapons, to strategize and attack, to figure out how to break through. But God's instructions were different. March, trust, and watch what he would do. No human effort could have made those walls fall, but when they obeyed and trusted, the victory was already theirs. The walls that seemed impossible crumbled before them, not because of their strength, but because of their faith. Paul, writing from prison, declared that he was more than a conqueror through Christ. His circumstances did not define his victory, his faith did. Even in chains, he was free. Even in trials, he had joy. His life was proof that victory is not about what happens around us. It is about who is within us. The power of God is not limited by circumstances. It is not held back by opposition. It is not dependent on how things look from a human perspective. It is eternal, unshakable, and available to all who trust in him. Walking in victory does not mean life will be free from challenges. It does not mean that struggles will never come. But it does mean that no struggle has the power to defeat those who trust in God. It means that fear does not get the final word, that setbacks are only setups for something greater, that what the enemy means for harm, God will turn for good. Victory is not about never facing battles. It is about knowing that the outcome has already been decided. Faith is the key that unlocks this reality. It is the choice to stand firm when circumstances say to give up. It is the decision to believe in God's promises even when they are not yet seen. It is the unwavering trust that he is working even when the evidence is not yet visible. The enemy would love nothing more than for people to live in doubt, in fear, in hesitation. But those who trust God are already victorious. Victory is not a distant hope. It is not a possibility that depends on circumstances. It is a reality for those who believe. The moment faith is placed fully in God, there is nothing that can stand in the way of his plans. There is no battle too great, no obstacle too strong, no situation too hopeless. The one who has overcome the world is the same one who walks with those who trust in him. In him, victory is already won. No matter what you face, no matter how impossible the situation may seem, you are not alone. You do not have to carry the weight of fear, doubt, or uncertainty. Trusting God is not a risk. It is the surest foundation you can stand on. His plans are greater, his ways are higher, and his faithfulness never fails. When you let go, when you surrender the need to control, when you place your full trust in him, you will see that he has already gone before you. The battles you face are not yours to fight alone. He is fighting for you. The trials you endure are not without purpose. He is working all things for good. And the victory you seek is not something you have to earn. Through him, it is already won. So trust, let go, and step forward in faith, knowing that with God you will overcome. Because when you place your trust in him, you are no longer fighting in your own strength. You are standing on the promises of the one who never fails. You will rise. You will overcome. you will see his faithfulness unfold in ways you never imagined. So trust, let go, and walk forward in the victory that is already yours.